now there's this whole like AI generation of marketing with AI. Are you tapping into anything like that?
Kenetik recently launched like a week and a half ago a really cool video that I came up with in my mind. And I reached out to one of our guys and said, hey.
What was the mindset there? Because some people sell and they're like, oh, I'm out.
I never, ever, ever thought I would go into another business, especially another beverage business again.
Welcome back to another episode of Simple Chat. I'm your host, Janine Cassio, the CEO and founder of Simplending Financial. And today we have a very special guest and a friend of mine, someone I've even worked for previously and have known for, I believe, over 10 years. Yeah, well over 10 years, actually, probably closer to 15 years. Cliff Morgan. Cliff, do you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
Sure. I'm Cliff Morgan. I am the founder and former CEO of G Fuel and the current Chief Growth Officer at Kenetik.
Love it. I was hoping you could dive into a bit of your journey as a CEO of G Fuel who's had an exit. So my audience is full of entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs like me, just seeking advice, seeking, how you overcame obstacles, and things like that. And really mindset, because I'm a big believer in mindset and, how you can really push through and, have the success like you. Like, obviously I want to be Cliff in 10 years from now. So kind of tapping into that. So, my first, real question, would be, when those obstacles come up, like what would be a piece of advice you would have for that?
So, I think part of what's always been my nature is like, I have no quit in me, right? So sometimes that could be a bad thing. But if I put my mind to do something and I'm really passionate about the end game, I just view all the little obstacles that come up every day as kind of like speed bumps, and you got to go through them. I will say that the job of a CEO, as I'm sure you know now, is not like a luxurious, elegant life. It is putting out one fire and then putting out another fire and putting out another fire, and everyone that brings them to you thinks that theirs is the most important one on the planet. So it's a lot of juggling. Delegating is something difficult for all young entrepreneurs, but ultimately is a skill that you need to master. Surround yourself with good, smart people that you can delegate and trust to, and just, don't take no for an answer.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm just grateful that I've had the experience to really firsthand experience of seeing you grow G Fuel, because I feel like it started with these little like local shops that we were popping up booths, and then we like did these like big conferences, and then we were traveling internationally to Korea and Poland, things like that, and just scaling. So what was like your mindset with like, when you started G Fuel, like, were you like, oh yeah, we're going to be worldwide? And like, how did you develop that? And how did you keep scaling and growing the company?
So that definitely was not the original plan. And some of it is luck and timing. They have that expression, the harder you work, the luckier you get, right? So it started out as health and wellness. I was selling products for athletes, right? An all-natural testosterone booster and pre-workout. And then I had people in the gaming audience, and esports wasn't even a phrase yet that was coined. And I had these kids that were playing video games and making videos on YouTube about them playing Call of Duty. And they had one or two of them reach out to me and tell me, hey, we're drinking your pre-workout at night and we're staying up and playing games all night. We play great. We have good reaction time. And the gaming industry was an orphan. Nobody cared about them. And esports wasn't a thing, and gaming wasn't viewed as an industry like it is today. And so I saw it right away, and I made a real pivot, a mindful pivot to go from sports nutrition. And I saw this orphan space that was burgeoning and growing, and these kids had money, and they loved the product, and they had passion. And when they said something, their peer group believed them, right? Versus like athletes pimp out products all the time, take this for that, and it's a lot of noise. But the gamers, unless you were making a video game or a computer or a controller, nobody was talking to them and offering them anything. So when we came along and said, hey, drink this out of this cup, we'll give you some energy, and we have a bunch of different flavors, and we kind of grew up in that world of gaming. And when people thought about energy drinks and video games, they thought of G Fuel. So we kind of became endemic in the world of gaming. And as the industry grew, we were fortunate that we grew too. And it's an international industry, so we got some international exposure.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you leverage social media so well and the influencers. And yeah, we were speaking a little bit before this podcast about that influence marketing. I was curious too, just, this is going to be a curveball, but now there's this whole like AI generation of marketing with AI. Are you tapping into anything like that for your business now?
So it's interesting that you say that, because Kenetik recently launched like a week and a half ago a really cool video that I came up with in my mind. And I reached out to one of our guys and said, hey, have the guy that made our last video, we launched a new flavor, watermelon lime. And I thought that the guy that did that video for me did a great job. So we reached out to him and said, look, I have this idea. Take these interviews from one of our partners and string them all together. And he talks about, he drives a race car for a living, and he talks about a bald eagle and all this other stuff. So I had the idea of having a bald eagle turn into a race car and do some really cool stuff, and then go inside the motor and see the cans of Kenetik moving around. And to have a team of graphic artists animate this would have taken 2 or 3 months and would have been $200,000. This guy did it in a couple of days for a few $1,000s. Now, we took some crap online from doing AI stuff because people are like, hey, you're taking work away from actual influencers. But the truth is, the guy that made it for us is an influencer. This is his medium. This is what he works in. And he makes digital creations like this. And we got a couple of people that didn't really respect it, but I think for the majority of people, they liked it. And I think that people need to adapt. AI is very new, but it's here. It's not going anywhere. People need to learn. It's like if you meet someone today that says, I don't know how to use a computer, right? In 10 years from now, that would be like ridiculous. People aren't going to say, I don't know how to use AI.
It's wild. Yeah, for sure. So just curious, going back to your previous role at G Fuel, like how many people did you start with? How many people did you end up with? Like, did you go in with the mindset of like, oh, I know I'm going to eventually like exit this business? Like, when did it come up for you? Like at the time of like, okay, now's the time to sell.
So I wanted to build $1 billion business. That was the plan, right? Mentally, that's where I was going. And, there was a long time when there was just 2 of us in the office. I mean, there were years when it was me and one other guy. I started the business in 2004, but G Fuel didn't turn into a product until I think 2010. So, for the first 6 years, I was struggling to do, 2-3 million a year in business. And then G Fuel kind of happened, and the business grew exponentially. So it went from 2 people to 200 people, when I sold it. So the idea, though, was never really to sell it. At one point, I had taken money from investors. I was in business for 20 years. And it just seemed like the right time.
Okay, and now you're back in the beverage game after selling one. Like, what was the mindset there? Because some people sell and they're like, "Oh, I'm out," but like you're like, "Let's start this back up again."
I never ever thought I would go into another business, especially another beverage business again. But I think what makes all good entrepreneurs is passion, right? You got to have passion for what you're doing. And I met these 2 guys, Devin and Peter, who are just, salt of the earth, brilliant guys from Washington, D.C. And they had a few patents, and I got introduced to them because they had new technology in the beverage space. So I was curious, because you don't really see tech in beverage. And I met them, and they had 3 patents. Now they have 4. And I was really intrigued. And I just, I'm a big believer in good karma, just kind of like how we're having this conversation. You reached out to me and said, hey, let's have a call. So I said, sure. Yeah. So I was talking to them. I went from a few times a month to a few times a week to a few times a day. And then I finally said, listen, sell me a piece of the business and let me join the company. And that's where we're at. So I developed a passion for the business. It gives me something to look forward to wake up in the morning. And I love it.
Very cool. And you kind of just mentioned earlier where you had like this vision of the AI commercial that you recently shot. Do you have any like techniques that like you kind of come down and like have these visions? Because you have to be a forward thinker, and I feel like you've pivoted a lot. You've had these visions. Do you have any techniques you use to get your mind working forward, like as much as you do for the future? of creating what you create?
So, I mean, first of all, Kenetik, it works on your brain. It's like, protein's food for your muscles. Kenetik and ketones feed your brain. So a lot of my thought pattern these days, my focus kind of comes from the product that I'm selling and making. But I think not everything hits the first time, right? So when I joined the company and we talked about let's make some media, this is before Roman and Cletus were involved. We went to Utah, hired a big company. I'm assuming you're familiar with Dr. Squatch, the soap company. So that their marketing had myself and some of my friends buy their product. Like I bought soap and shampoo online and signed up for continuity, which is something I wouldn't normally do, but their videos sucked me in and I signed up. So I wanted to make something like that, entertaining, educational, kind of funny. And we spent $250,000 and we made a really great 3-minute piece of media, and then we started spending money using it on YouTube and Meta and stuff to pay for customers to see it, and it didn't do great. So like I was sure in my head that this was the right thing to do, and then $400,000 later, $250 for the video, $150 in media buying, we're like, this is not having a positive ROI.
Yeah.
So we kind of backburnered that, and then Roman came in as an owner, and then Cletus came in as an owner. And then we brought that video back 6 months later and started using it for retargeting, and it's a home run. So I wasn't right out of the gate, but it's still something that, now I don't feel like we wasted money on it because it's very effective, and repetition sells, especially in e-commerce.
Wow. Love it. Okay. So say, I'm Cliff, just starting G Fuel, my first be the CEO of G Fuel. What are you telling yourself, as a piece of advice, if you were to sum it up in, one sentence, say?
There's always another deal behind this one.
Wow.
Right. So like, I think that what happens is you get, you see an appealing idea, or you want to hire an influencer, you want to make something happen, especially in the world of influencers. At the beginning, I would talk to a guy in the NFL or a famous so-and-so, and I really want this deal. And then if it didn't happen, I used to be disappointed, but I feel like these days, if they don't happen, they weren't meant to happen. They need to be easy. They can't all be forced. And behind every deal, or every person, or every influencer, there's a line of them way longer than you could see. So if the one in front of you doesn't happen, there's so many behind them. You just like if they were meant to happen, they happen. And the deals that don't happen were meant not to happen.
Wow, that's powerful. Do you have any mentors or books or, things that you were really like, this really helped me elevate my mindset, or anything you could share with our audience?
So I have one mentor in life. He was, before G Fuel, I was an investment banker. I started out as a stockbroker on Long Island, and he was actually my largest customer 30 years ago. And he's been an investor and now a good friend for 3 decades, and he has a ton of experience. He's a wealthy guy, and he doesn't probably think that he's mentored me, but just seeing him work and watching him invest, and just he's a very accomplished, successful businessman.
Wow, love that. So how do people find out more about your product? How can people kind of find more about you and reach out to you?
So I'm on Instagram. Cliff Gamma CEO is Instagram. We have, just Cliff at drinkkenetik.com. I guess if people want to find out about Kenetik, just go drinkkenetik.com and check out the website. And if they have a reason why they want to email me, they can email me. I'm pretty accessible.
And what is next for Kenetik?
More flavors, some huge partnerships. The team is we're going to have one of the first health and wellness and anti-aging houses in South Florida. Wow. So just like I had gaming houses from G Fuel. And again, that's what helped G Fuel become endemic in the world of gaming. People thought about video games, energy drinks, they thought of G Fuel. So I don't want to really call it a content house, but we're going to have a huge house in Florida where we'll have anybody that's friends with the Kenetik, whether it's influencers or coworkers. We'll have a frequency room, red light therapy, sauna, like everything that you would see in one of the upscale pages. Yeah. So there's probably a couple popping up in Houston and Austin. Austin is another big spot for anti-aging and biohacking. So, and I think that's also what keeps me motivated is the fact that I feel like Kenetik is kind of growing up in this trend of long-term fasting, intermittent fasting, anti-aging, biohacking. So again, the timing, sometimes it's very helpful to be on trend.
Love it. Very cool. Well, thank you, Cliff, for being on this episode of Simple Chat.
You're very welcome. I'm so proud of you and happy for your success.
Thanks, Cliff.